Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Familiar with the Matter. This is Long Haul Trucking 2, the sequel, Electric Boogaloo. Joining me today is Eric Hammer. Hello, Eric.
How's it going, Scribe?
Goes all right. Came across Eric because Eric left some comments in the previous episode dealing with long haul trucking. And he took exception to some things that Diesel Dave said in that. But we're not going to dwell too much on that controversy until later on in the show. We're going to find out more about Eric first. So, everybody, for those of you joining us for the first time or haven't seen this kind of show before, it's just me asking questions of interesting people on interesting topics that are people who are familiar with the matter at hand. And so, just so you know, there will be a question time near the end of the show, 15 or 20 minutes, depending on how many questions we get. If you do have a burning question you want to ask in the course of the show, I may spot it in the course of things on the chat. If you super chat it, obviously I'll see it more readily. That's up to you. Either way, there will be time at the end to pose questions to Eric. So, with that all being said, Eric, what makes you familiar with the matter in the general sense of long haul trucking?
Well, for the most part, I've only been driving truck for 3 years. However, my father was a driver back in the 70s and just into 1980, and both of his parents were drivers as well.
Okay. Now, if I remember correctly, you have some other life experience that's given you some perspective on this as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Um, yes, mostly it has to deal with the controversy of the last trucking episode, but I have experience in numerous forms of technology. I've worked on my own truck. I've done networking, wiring, programming, hardware for computers. I've pretty much touched everything with computers, and I know a little bit more than I would guess he does about that sort of stuff.
Okay. Well, we'll get to the contentions as it were later on, and then after this, you and Dave can start doing your own podcast called "Bad Mother Truckers" or something.
Maybe.
So, prior to becoming a trucker, what kind of work experience did you have?
Um, in 19 or well, no, not 19. In 2009, I joined the Marine Corps, um, and I was a data network specialist for 5 years. So from March of 2009 to 2014, I did um, computer networking for the Marine Corps. After I got out of the Marine Corps, I kind of fell on my face with nothing to do. No one wanted to hire me for the career field that I had chosen for myself. So I worked at an e-cig shop for about 2 years in northern Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and then I fell even harder on hard times, and this was the only job I could find to keep my family afloat. So I spent my last $300 and got myself a CDL.
Okay. Now, uh, did any experience with your growing up with your father being a driver and everything assist you in preparing yourself for this?
My father wasn't driving by the time I was born.
Okay.
Um, However, when he taught me how to drive, he taught me the basics of driving a semi. I learned how to double clutch. I became hyper aware of all of my surroundings, and I knew where my vehicle was at all time. And those are major things that you need to be
Hmm.
able to do this job.
Okay. And let's see, how difficult would you say it was to like? I'm not. I'm sure I'm going to repeat questions I've asked Dave, but you know, everybody's different. Every situation's different. So, how difficult would you say it was for you to become a trucker? I mean, were the hoops difficult in your by your estimation, or is it something that anybody can do?
Um, it is not something that anyone can do. It can be difficult. Again, you have to have that, especially that hyper awareness of your surroundings. Um, I've seen numerous accidents that have been had by drivers that should not be doing this job,
Hmm.
especially backing incidents. If you can't back a 75-foot vehicle, you shouldn't be doing this job.
Hmm. So, what's the biggest truck or biggest? Do you have your own cab? I guess I forget how this works exactly. Or do you just have one leased from your company, or do you have your own?
I'm a company driver. They own the truck.
Hmm.
Um, However, I've had a bigger truck than this before. So right now I've got what's called a standard sleeper. It's not very big. It's basically big enough for me
Hmm.
to lay down and watch TV.
And
Um,
how? Oh, sorry.
the the first truck that I had with the company I work for right now had what was called a studio sleeper. It's about 4 feet longer and has a lot more space to store stuff. Um, it's more conducive to long haul trucking, even though it's bigger.
Now, separate from Dave, if I understood you correctly, you have a family of your own.
I do. I have my ex-wife and a 6-year-old daughter.
And how often do you get a chance, and how long do you get a chance to go and stay back home while you're working?
Um, it's pretty well up to me. Um, I have to let the company know about 2 weeks ahead of time when I want to be home. But other than that, I can be home whenever I want in the middle of the week, during a weekend. It doesn't matter just as long as I'm making the miles that they ask me to make.
Okay. And so far, what's the longest trip you've had to make from one point to another?
Longest trip I've had to make was about 2,200 miles.
Okay.
That was from um, Florida, um, right by the Keys, to Grand Forks, North Dakota.
Wow. So now this is a little, subjective, but in 3 years' time, do you think you've got it all down, or do you still find yourself learning new things as you go?
Uh, I still learn new things. Most of what you're going to learn on the road is the driving patterns of places that you're not familiar with.
Hmm.
Um, I don't get to Texas very often, so I don't know how people drive down there. It takes me a little bit of driving through that area to adjust and learn how everybody drives. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever driven through Memphis, Tennessee, but it borders both Missouri and Tennessee, and people don't use their turns around there.
See,
And
now
if
that's
you
something.
do,
Oh, sorry.
if you do use your turn signal around Memphis, they're gonna swarm you. They're all
Mm-hmm.
gonna swarm you, and you move.
Yeah, I've always heard people say, things like California drivers and things like that. I guess I've never really thought of it as style of driving is regional too. It's never really occurred to me, but you see that there's a distinct uh, culture or way of driving as you go from place to place in the country.
Yes, there is. So I mentioned before that I had been in the Marine Corps. I was stationed out in North Carolina, and around around military bases, you of everyone from different parts of the country, and you all have to learn how to drive around each other, and it's so erratic. Uh, Military towns have the highest accident rates other than major cities
Mm-hmm.
because no one knows how everybody else drives.
So if you, random question, if you were a passenger in a car and you didn't know anything about the driver, but you just sat there for 20 minutes, half an hour watching them drive, do you think you could identify what part of the country they came from?
Possibly it
Yeah.
might take a couple hours.
Oh, okay.
Uh, it wouldn't be half an hour.
Oh, okay.
A, a lot of different areas exhibit similar situations. So, for instance, driving down through Georgia is similar to driving Interstate 35 south of Minneapolis, Minnesota,
Mm-hmm.
because they both have inclement weather. Um, in Georgia, you've got really rain, and then in Minnesota you have horrible fall,
Yeah.
and sometimes the two driving styles overlap. It takes a little while to actually see the differences.
Okay. Now you'd said that you took up trucking and sort of a time of well, I don't want to say words for you, but like desperation or in a
Yeah, I was
bad
definitely desperate.
situation. Okay, it's time of desperation. So this wouldn't have been your first choice, I take it.
No,
Okay.
and in fact, like I said before, my chosen career when I was 17, 18 years old was computer networking. I
Hmm.
found interest in driving life away like I do now.
So then I guess since you've taken this up, are you finding that you enjoy it, or is it just a job?
Um, I do enjoy it, but it was pretty much the lifestyle that I was going to have to pick up on after being in the Marine Corps for 5 years and then coming back out into civilian life. You realize people suck, and you just don't want to be around them.
Yeah. So trucking affords you a certain level of isolation and independence.
Yes.
Okay. So if let's say that the solitude is the plus of the whole job. What's your least favorite part of it?
People that don't know how to drive.
Well,
Um,
that's most of the country.
I know it is. It can be fun to be in an area where the majority of drivers I encounter don't know how to drive,
Hmm.
um, but it can be a major chore.
Okay. Uh, so would you also say then that the other drivers are constitute the biggest danger in the profession?
Yes, uh, people who drive cars are the most dangerous obstacle we face on a daily basis.
Hmm. Is that because of the skill necessary to operate a truck around smaller cars, or is that the awareness of the regular drivers of a big truck around them?
It's the awareness of big trucks around them
Hmm.
and the awareness. I'm sure you've driven instantly before trying to get to work or some prior set engagement and you're about to run late. You kind of lose yourself in the moment and you're not paying attention to what's going
Hmm.
on around you, and so you just kind of get narrow zoned and you don't see anything else going on around you. um, I constantly have people that are in that frame of mind and change lanes right in front of me. We're talking 10 feet or less, and will slam on their brakes.
Yeah. Um, so when like I say, I'm trying not to dwell too much on the previous episode, but all I know about this is from Diesel Dave. He
Mm.
was relatively adamant that when I asked him, well, if there was somebody who wanted to get into this, and his almost immediate answer was, don't. Is uh, I mean, this wasn't your first choice, obviously, for a career, but do you see any benefits, or would you recommend this as a career to anyone, given your experience so far?
If I see someone who has the proper mindset for it and the proper basic driving skills,
Mm-hmm.
um, so they don't mind being alone for long periods of time, and they don't have horrible driving habits. They don't have to have the greatest driving habits, just not extremely horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So keep a good following distance, use your turn signals, and use your lights. Those are the biggest ones, besides actual driving skills. If you can do that and you can gain that hyper awareness before you come out on the road, it's a good job.
Mm-hmm. Is it, it does it make what you do? Does it make enough to call it a living wage and all that fun stuff?
More than um,
More than okay.
in, yeah, in the Marine Corps, I was making just over $20,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Working at the e-cig shop, I wasn't even making poverty level.
Sure.
Uh, but doing this job last year, I made just over $80,000.
Okay. Now, you don't have to get too specific. I'm just, curious. But while you were in the Marine Corps, did you see action?
No,
Okay. But I'm more than certain that the regimented nature of the Marine Corps and everything else makes civilian life look like a cakewalk in some instances.
it does, especially when you go into military service during a time of war. It's all combat mindset all the time.
Sure.
You you learn to be very aggressive, and that's just not conducive to civilian life. You cannot be that aggressive, especially nowadays.
Sure.
Every,
Yeah.
everybody's a
No,
little bit too sensitive.
yeah. When you're always got to be ready to go to war, you're never really outside the mindset of going to war. So,
Exactly.
now, do you think anything of your military experience lent itself to do you find any of that useful in doing your job now? Did any of it lead you to have a maybe a different perspective than your Joe average driver or anything like that? I mean, I'm not quite sure what I'm asking, but
Uh, yeah, I the military experience changes anyone who goes in the military, and I'm honestly anyone that goes into the Marine Corps and doesn't come out a little bit politically social, um, they're they're weird to me. But being in the Marine Corps, if you have the basics instilled into you, so uh, understanding what you're fighting for, the Constitution, and the people that you defend, if you don't have an understanding of that, which the majority of the country doesn't, you did something wrong, and you probably didn't belong in the military.
hmm. Do you come across many other veterans in trucking?
Quite a few, and in fact, the majority of the people who drive for my company are veterans. Um, the company was started by an Army veteran and his wife, and both of his kids served, and they wanted to make it one of those we do anything and everything we can for the men and women that served our country.
Okay, that's good. You found a place that gives you a little bit of special consideration. What's the weirdest haul you ever had to do so far? Either in the actual stuff you were hauling or events along the way.
Um, I would have to say the oddest thing I have ever pulled was it was actually similar to Diesel Dave's. I pulled a pallet of bottled water
Mm-hmm.
that 2,200 miles from Florida to Grand Forks.
Sorry, how many miles you cut out there a little bit?
The 2,200
Oh, okay.
miles.
Yeah, I don't quite understand a giant truck being paid to haul something that you could put in the back of a van. I'm not saying it's bad. If you get paid either way, that's fine. I don't quite get that though.
A lot of companies have what are called LTL rates, which is less than load.
Hmm.
And what happens is you book space on the truck,
Right.
on the trailer. You tell the company that's going to be transporting it how much it's going to cost for that pallet because they're planning on picking up more stuff on the way to the destination
Okay.
and dropping all of that stuff before they get to the destination where that pallet is.
Okay. All right. Well, the question is boiling, but before we get into the issue of automation,
Mm-hmm.
what is the best diner recommendation that you have? Because Diesel Dave gave us one. What would your recommendation be in the places that you've been so far? The best truck stop diner to go to in your experience?
I would have to say none of them.
What? None of them?
Yes. Um, I I have issues with food on the road.
Okay.
Uh, and it's nothing I've ever been diagnosed with, but every time I eat out while I'm driving, get get bubbly guts, I should
Okay.
say.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so I make all of my food in the truck.
Ah. Okay. Now, is that I don't know, is that a relatively common thing? Do a lot of people like live almost completely out of their trailer
Um,
or their cab?
no,
Sorry.
um, most of the people on the road do not because they're not privy to all of the ways of cooking that you can do while driving.
Hmm.
The two major things that I see on the road if someone is cooking in their truck is a crock pot and a microwave.
But
Um,
you were mentioning something else before we went on the air. What's your method?
my method is called sous vide. It's a hot water bath. You use either a pot or a cooler and what's called an immersion circulator. And the immersion circulator has a heating coil and then a little fan down at the bottom. And as the coil heats the water, the fan is bringing water in and pushing it out. And it keeps the water at one temperature that you specify. So if you want steak, if you know you're going to want steak, you vacuum seal, your choice of cow cut, and then you stick it in the bath for say 5 hours at 136 degrees. Take it out with a hot air gun. You sear the top, you sear the bottom, and you've got perfectly medium rare steak.
Hmm. So now, when are you going to start your YouTube channel of trucker cooking?
That's one of the channels that I've got in the works,
Oh, I was
and
just
that
kidding.
should
But
be
okay.
coming soon.
I thought I was making a bad
I've got
joke, but no, you got a plan. Okay.
I've got two channels in the works. One is live streaming Let's Plays
Mm-hmm.
on my computer, and one is um, cooking on the road,
Okay.
and
Cool.
that should start here within the next month.
Okay. And for those of you that might be listening to this in the distant future, whenever Eric gets those set up, he's going to send me the links and I'll put them in the description so you guys can go check that out. All right. Well, let's get to the main event. Because as I mentioned, I came across Eric because he had some choice comments to make regarding certain aspects of the previous interview I did with Diesel Dave, specifically about the subject of automation. Now, I don't want to put words into Dave's mouth, and if Dave wants to correct me later on in question time or otherwise, by all means. And also anybody, I'll put a link after the show to the previous episode regarding long haul trucking. But Dave's prediction was, in short, I should say, that automation, as in driverless vehicles and the like, would, in so many words, kill the long haul trucking industry inside 10 years or so. And that goes for both drivers and the persons that benefit peripherally from long haul trucking. So, like the diners and maybe some of the maintenance and so on. But Eric contends that that's not the case. So, what, Eric, is your so where do you so before we get to saying exactly what you think is wrong, where do you think trucking is going to be in 10 years from your perspective?
Um, there are going to be fewer drivers on the road,
Mm-hmm.
not because of automation, but because people are going to finally learn that they don't belong on the road.
Okay,
But
how do you wait? How do you mean they don't belong on the road?
well, for instance, the idiots that can't back their truck, say at a truck stop,
Uh-huh.
you know, they're hitting other trucks when they're backing in. Those people are probably going to finally realize they don't belong on the road.
Well, but that doesn't reduce that might reduce individual drivers off the road, but that doesn't reduce the demand for drivers that do know what they're doing.
Yes, it's not going to kill off the industry, but
Okay.
there will be fewer drivers on the road, but there's going to be a higher demand for drivers knowing that know what they're doing.
Okay, so you're saying that the standards are going to be raised because there's too many problems with the way things are right now.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. And what has told you that that is something that's going to happen?
Um, I have seen a lot of small companies that tried to be big companies like Warner or Prime uh, or even TMC.
Well, don't get too specific with companies. I don't want to end up getting anybody
Yeah,
mad at us or anything.
well, I don't. I'll refrain from any more companies, but
Okay.
the big companies or companies that have tried to be big like them
Hmm.
failed because they bring on too many drivers that don't know what they're doing,
Hmm.
and they've lost almost everything and had to downsize. And now, as those companies are slowly expanding again, they're a lot more selective on who they hire.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
it it took me 2 years just to get into the company that I work for now
Hmm.
because I had an accident on my record back in 2015.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's not a bad thing. I mean, raising standards for safety and everything
No,
else it would be a good
it's
thing.
not
So
a bad thing at all.
yeah, and it might reduce the number of drivers out on the road in the short term, but that just means that by the time they fill up all those spots, they'll be with people who are conceivably there for the, no pun intended, for the long haul and are a better quality driver.
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
assuming. Okay, so but that as far as like reducing the number of drivers on the road, that's what you see as happening to the standards being raised. So what about Dave's fear that automation, the actual like driverless cars or other things, what about his concern is incorrect from your perspective?
There are two major issues, and they both revolve around electronics and the cold.
Okay.
The electronics and the cold do not play well together. And I have experienced this time and again with issues on my trucks. Anything below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and you risk destroying electrical components on any truck. I've had two sensors on my truck go bad this past winter because I had to drive in 20 to 50 below weather. Uh, Not only that, but batteries do not fare well in the cold either. Um, if if you ever take a car battery out in the cold, just take it out fully charged and set it out and constantly monitor that that battery. It's going to discharge a lot. So if, say for instance, Tesla wants to bring their their battery powered truck onto the road, it's not going to be able to travel up north. It's not going to survive the cold. It's going to discharge way too fast.
Okay, so you're saying that the barrier to reliable driverless vehicles, insofar as like reducing the need for long haul trucker drivers, is that the electronics are not built or cannot sustain long periods of exposure to low temperatures.
Correct.
Okay, and there is no way that that problem can be mitigated with innovations in insulation or other materials used?
No, not unless you want to suck atmosphere out of areas where trucks drive.
Okay, well, what if? Okay, well, how about this scenario? All right, so maybe Dave's estimate is a bit hyperbolic. Like automation, driverless vehicles aren't going to eliminate the need for drivers completely, but if you know that you've got routes through certain areas that will never or have a very low chance of ever dealing with cold temperatures, then couldn't those routes be more safely automated than those that are up north, let's say? So let's say routes through, California and Mexico and that kind of thing, or New Mexico and
It's
Arizona. Those, yeah.
it is possible.
Hmm.
The issues I see with that are desert, especially after the splitting of the polar vortex this year. Um, Arizona and other desert areas experienced almost exact same low temperature that say Iowa did, which was 20 below.
Hmm.
They didn't experience that at night, but or during the day, but they did experience that at night, and that's too cold.
Okay, so it's not that automation will not have an impact on driving. It's just that it won't have the widespread impact that Dave feels is going to happen.
No, it would pretty much have to stay down in Texas and Florida for it to stick around.
So would that, I mean, and this might be a bit more speculative, but would that then open up the opportunity for smaller trucking concerns that just specialize in particular climates or areas to sort of own that territory with automated trucks versus having to pay drivers at the same time?
It could. Um, I don't believe that pretty much any of the smaller companies will go to automation simply because most of these smaller companies were started by other drivers and they know that people need to make a living.
Okay. Hmm. Well, I've hit one of those points where I'm not quite sure what else to ask. Is there anything that has occurred to you that I haven't asked so far that you wanted to say about anything we've talked about thus far?
Um, I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on the sucking the atmosphere out of areas that trucks drive.
Okay.
Um, I had talked with a couple of people on Discord about that controversy, innovation in insulation and those types of things. My issue is the only innovation that we can make is to put space type materials, like from the space station and the
Mm-hmm.
shuttles, to
Sure.
trucks. But that doesn't work in an atmosphere. You
Okay.
are still hitting moisture, and there's still wind cooling that moisture. Um, the only way that that material works is in a vacuum, which you don't have a temperature outside in space technically because there is no atmosphere.
Right.
You only have a temperature inside the cabin. That's how those materials work.
So the only conceivable way then to insulate against the cold would be have an absolute vacuum without a surrounding atmosphere, then, I guess.
Yes, pretty much.
Okay. You can't really achieve that on planet Earth.
No,
Yeah.
not
Okay.
unless we're going to defy the laws of physics.
Well, Elon Musk thinks he can on a
Well,
regular
you know
basis.
what? A great engineer once said, "You cannot change the laws of physics," and that was Scotty. I'm
uh,
I'm a huge Trek nerd.
no, that's fine. I got plenty of those. Um, let's see. I'm trying to think if there's something else. Um, do you see yourself doing this for a long time, or is this something that's just sort of like this is what's working right now, and later on, or do you think you'll be a lifer, kind of like Dave's parents?
I will probably be doing this until the day I die.
Really,
Yes.
you're that comfortable with it?
I'm comfortable with it. I'm comfortable enough to say that there will never be a time on this planet where I'm comfortable with people and civilization and
Sure.
that I
Okay.
hate them. Um, and that that doesn't change the fact that I I'm making plans to make my life in the truck better. I cook in
Hmm.
the truck, and soon, I hope, I will be buying a truck of my own with a penthouse sleeper.
Okay. So, do you think then that this kind of job and this kind of lifestyle requires someone who is either not a fan of or not dependent on human interaction?
Um, if they're going to do it for longer than a year, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
My first year in the truck was the absolute hardest because I wasn't around anyone. I fell into a deep depression, and then I just kind of snapped out of it one day and said, "What the hell do I care? I hate people."
All right. Well, let's see. Let's see. Check Your Logic asks, how long did it take you to travel all 48 states, or have you traveled all 48 states yet?
I have not traveled all 48 states. The only ones I'm missing are Wyoming, Idaho, Oregon, Nevada, California, and Washington.
Okay. Hmm. Well, I got to tell you, unless I'm blanking now because I think I've asked nearly everything I asked Dave, if not maybe a couple more. It's like again, and I hate to rely too much on the guest, but is there anything about the job or the industry or just I don't know the everyday grind of it that you think is worth noting?
Well, I've got some advice for people who are considering this.
There you go. Yeah, I kind of I guess I kind of fell off that one with Dave because he pretty much said don't do it. But
Yeah.
in your
Um,
case, in case there's somebody out there, I think somebody in the channel actually mentioned the fact that they're thinking about going into this. What preparatory steps would you suggest someone take before getting into this?
do not go to a driving school that requires you to take out a loan.
Alone, okay.
And if ever you feel if ever you feel that they are trying to just take money and pump you through, quit. Don't don't worry about getting your money back. I'm sure you will find another career, but those driving schools that take money and just try to pump drivers out as fast as possible, they're not working for your best interest. Past that, if you do find a good driving school, um, you pretty much have to pay your dues. Spend at least a year on the road with no accidents. Understand that you are the captain of that ship. If they want you to do something that you don't feel safe doing, don't do it. Feel free to lose your job because there are plenty more, but do not do something that is unsafe. Because at the end of the day, if you get caught doing something illegal, the onus is on you,
Mm-hmm.
not the company.
Right. All right. Well, then let's open it up to the chat then. So, chat, if you have questions for Eric, if you have comments, put them in the chat now. Diesel Dave, I know you'll probably have some questions for him, and I already see that you do. As the other resident expert, I'll be looking forward to yours. But Dave asks, how many miles have you driven thus far in 3 years?
Just under 3/4 of a million miles.
Okay, so just a little bit under 350,000. Okay.
750,000.
Oh, sorry. So there goes my math in my head. Sorry. Uh, 3/4. Uh, I was an English major, by the way, guys, not a math major, just so you know.
It's
Uh,
okay. Be perfect at everything.
yeah, and Steven Sperling asked, "Is this a different series than Lords of the Night?" Yes, this is a separate series than Lords of the Night. This is a interview sort of talk series that I came up with one day. I came up with it as a joke out of the title, as the phrase "familiar with the matter" was used by the media over and over again to describe anonymous sources. And so I made a joke that I'd make a talk show called Familiar with the Matter. And here it is. Ranting Monkey asked, what is your favorite road to drive?
Oh, favorite road to drive. It would probably have to be Interstate 20 through Texas.
Why is that?
Um, it's a pretty smooth ride the entire way.
Okay.
If I was driving in Michigan, I'd probably be cursing monkey the entire time. They don't know how to take care of their roads up there.
Let's see. Stephen Sperling says education in Scotland is the first episode. Yes, that was the first of these that I did. Diesel Dave wanted to clarify. So you did 3/4 of a million miles in 3 years.
It's actually been about 4 years.
Okay.
And yes, I hardly ever get out of the truck. I've been doing recaps most of this past year.
Let's see. Backscan said, I don't think truckers will be replaced, but it would be hard to keep a battery warm enough to work. You would need to keep monitoring it and include a way to warm it, but it's possible, in my opinion. Yeah, and that we talked about that. It's like, can you have a completely autonomous vehicle, but still have to deal with monitoring the batteries and such. So
Yeah.
that's Eric's contention why driverless vehicles will not take over the world, so to speak. Dave is dubious about your claim of being able to drive 250,000 miles per year.
It's like I said, closer to 4 years,
Okay.
and cut 742,000 miles into 4 years. It's doable. It's about 180,000 a year.
Okay. Sora Luna wants to know: do you collect any souvenirs from the areas you drive through?
No, I don't, but I do buy things for my daughter. I've actually got one of them in the truck right now from a trip that I took to New York.
Okay. Have you ever taken your daughter out for drives in the truck and everything?
Yeah, actually, she spent a week with me after her fifth, no, fourth birthday. We drove back from Florida after she spent a month with her grandparents down.
Do you think that I know Dave talked about how I think it was his mother and his father were basically together and living in tandem driving a truck. Do you think that's a lifestyle that you could see yourself doing at some point? I mean, granted, you got involved with someone again or got married again.
Um, it's possible. I would have to have a bigger truck. This truck is just not livable for long periods of time with another person in it.
Okay. Steve Luzon says, "You guys do know autonomous trucks don't have to be electric, right?" But
No,
yeah,
they don't have to be electric, but there are definitely going to be multiple points of failure in diesel trucks, especially in the cold.
yeah. Even if the car is not powered by electric, there's still going to be parts of it that and modern trucks these days. I don't think there's a modern truck these days that doesn't have some electronic components to it that are necessary for it to operate.
Yes, the majority of the trucks on the road these days have speed limiters. Most drivers I run into can't go over 62 miles per hour.
Yeah. Let's see. Steve was on. Even if they are electric, they'll have problems. Well, yeah, that's the thing. Diesel Dave says, "Get back to me when you have a decade in." Diesel Dave is a driving snob. He's a long haul trucking snob.
And I've run into guys who have been out here for long periods of time, and I respect the fact that they've done this longer than I have. But I've also run into drivers that have done this for a long time that, quite frankly, probably don't have any business on the road. And I'm not saying that Diesel Dave is. I'm just saying I've run into those sorts of people. And most of the ones that I've run into on the road that don't have any business doing it feel that they know everything.
Well, now that's just a slight implicit shot across the bow at Dave there. Come on.
Oh, I didn't ever think that Dave said that he knew everything.
Okay. All right. Not trying to start any internet blood sports here or anything, guys. But like I said, this is a sort of rebuttal episode. Eric convinced me to let him on to talk about this from his perspective. And you got a veteran like Dave, and you have a relative greenhorn like Eric on the subject. So
yes,
different perspectives.
I am relatively new to the industry. I'm, however, well versed in electronics and how they work, all all that stuff, which is why I had contentions with Dave's views on automation.
Okay. Now, do you see yourself always being a driver, or would you want to get anywhere else in the somewhere else in the industry, either management or maybe owning your own truck, maybe something like that. Maybe I can say
Well,
maybe five more times.
I have been saving for the past 4 years to own my own truck.
Okay,
Um, I'm I'm seeing another 3 years before I will actually own my own truck. I will not finance. I will buy my own straight out.
sure.
And I would eventually like to start my own company, but I will not manage the company. I belong out on the road.
I'm not quite sure what Dave just said, but he says I've probably watched try to back in a hole for 20 minutes. I don't know what that means exactly. Check your logic is asking again. And I know you mentioned the beginning of the show, but for anybody who came in late, what connections does your family have to trucking?
Um, well, there's no connections any longer. Um, but my father was a driver up until 1980, and both of his parents were drivers since he was a child.
Okay. Blair does not care. What are the advantages of owning your own truck?
Um, you will make slightly more money. You can say for certain that you can probably live off of 3 days' work in a truck if it's small and it has good fuel economy.
Hmm.
But if you do not know how to maintain your truck and do preventative maintenance so that things don't break down on the road, it's going to be much more difficult to make owning your own truck livable, which is why most drivers are only company drivers.
Hmm. Okay. Let's see. Sora asks, "What's your top driving pet peeve?" I can probably guess, but go ahead.
Idiot drivers.
Yeah. Well, aside from okay, so aside from drivers, so I know that is the big one, but if you had to set drivers aside, what is the second biggest danger, regular danger in long haul trucking?
Um, Second biggest danger or my second biggest pet peeve?
Whichever comes to mind first. Yeah.
My second biggest pet peeve is states that don't know how to maintain their interstates.
Okay, infrastructure. Yeah, now that's something I should have asked Dave, because one of the things that keeps coming up in our politics and everything is arguments about our lack of
Infrastructure.
maintaining our infrastructure, maintaining and fixing and everything else.
Yeah.
From your travels, how bad is it? I mean, it's a general question, but I don't get out into the rest of the world that often, so I don't know if it's actually as bad an issue. I'm sure truckers see more of it than anybody else.
Michigan is pretty bad. Um, there are a couple states that have interstates that are close to as bad as Michigan. You've got Illinois and Indiana, but most of the bad areas in those states are only short areas. We're talking maybe 20 miles max. But with Michigan, it's pretty much all of Interstate 94, all of Interstate 75. It's crappy.
Hmm. Let's see. Steve asks, "Isn't the main problem with Michigan roads the high weight limits?"
Um, no, it's not that they have high weight limits. It's that they have basically gone the way of limiting weight per axle instead of total gross weight.
Hmm.
And so if you have enough axles on your truck and trailer to pull all of the weight, you're fine. For instance, a truck is a truck like mine is only supposed to be able to gross out at 80,000 pounds, whereas if I was driving a flatbed with a 10-foot spread on the trailer, which means there's 10 feet between the center of the two axles on the trailer, I would technically be able to pull, let's see, 12,000 steer, 34,000. That's 46,000 plus. I'd technically be able to pull 86,000 in Michigan
Okay.
because those two axles on that trailer can carry 20,000 each.
Okay, let's see. Diesel says his biggest pet peeve is the long hours. He also agrees that Michigan blows. He says
Yes.
that Illinois and Indiana don't compare to Michigan.
No, they don't compare, but there are segments of the interstates that are absolutely horrible. Interstate 80 in Illinois. Um, I think it's between Chicago and Joliet. That's a crapshoot sometimes, especially right after winter. It's either construction or the interstate was absolutely destroyed during the winter.
Let's see. Original Shroom says, what I hate are 18 wheelers tying up both lanes of 4-lane roads. Due to their weight, they accelerate slowly and have to brake early for lights. I see this nearly every day. Is
I
that can long haul truckers at all mitigate that issue, or is that just unavoidable?
Yeah, get your ass out of the fucking left lane. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm sorry for swearing, but for Christ's sake, if you are a driver and you drive one of these beasts, stay out of the left lane unless you know you are going to pass someone immediately. If you have to take a left turn, it's fine sitting there for a mile and a half tops. But signal early and make sure that people know you're going to turn so that they know you're going to get out of their stinking way.
Okay. Let's see. Check your logic. Didn't know what TOS standed for. Yes, that's the original shroom. There you go. Secret revealed. Um, let's see. Random American says, "Don't be modest. All of Illinois is crap." Well, I've never been, so I can't say, but I'll leave that up to those
I'm
more
not from
experienced.
I'm not from Illinois, but I'm from one state over.
Okay. Without getting too specific. Um, let's see. I don't see any other questions here from anybody else. Um, uh, oh, check your life says, can you drive up to Canada if you wanted? I don't know. Don't you have kind of some kind of special permit to do international trucking?
If you don't have any bad marks on your driving record, you have to have either what's called a pass card,
Mm-hmm.
which basically allows you only to drive in and drive out. You must not stop anywhere other than to get fuel, make your delivery, and get the hell out. Or a passport,
Mm-hmm.
in which you can stay as long as you'd like, just so long as you're not overstaying your welcome.
Oh yeah, Steve. Steve brings up. I used to watch this show. Would you ever consider doing ice road trucking?
Not a chance in hell. Uh, I I may feel confident with my abilities to drive in inclement weather in the continental 48. I grew up in Iowa. I've dealt with ice my entire life. But there is no way that I am going to drive on ice for a living.
Mm-hmm.
and only on ice for a living. I need some dry roads.
Okay. Let's see. Anything else? Okay. Check Your Life says, how different would it be to be a bus driver compared to a truck driver? I'm assuming they are completely worlds apart, but you tell me.
Um, to my understanding, you still have to have a commercial driver's license, but other than being able to pass the written exam, which is pretty much the same, I don't think you have to have combination vehicle unless you're driving one of those weird buses that has the sleeve in the center. But other than that, you have to have your air brakes and air brakes combination. God, it's been so long since I took the written exam. I can't remember the endorsement. But
Hmm.
there's three written tests that you have to take. Um, for buses, I don't think you have to take, like I said before, the combination vehicle exam. And then you are driving a shorter vehicle than a normal semi. I think it's 45 feet. Um, you still have swing on the back, but other than that, it's like driving a car. If you watch your back axle, it's easier to drive around in a city with that thing.
Hmm. Flying Monkey Death Squadron Commander says, as a guy who understands industrial automation and over the road logistics maintenance, the required maintenance standards are not there to facilitate automated drivers. Would you
No.
agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. Backscan says, I've seen quite a few videos of idiots brake checking trucks. How often do you run into that? Hopefully, not literally.
Uh, um, I don't run into it, but I know people who have run into it. It's a no pun intended, semi common occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People do whatever they can to collect insurance money. And large companies, even small companies, they've got some deep pockets. So if you can get hit by a truck legitimately and they don't have a dash cam that proves that you slammed on your brakes in an unsafe manner, you can have a pretty big collection day.
Mm.
Uh,
And
Other than
you have
that,
a.
it's not. Go ahead.
No, no, you go ahead. Sorry.
Other than that, it's not an extreme common occurrence. Most
Okay.
people value their lives and know to stay the hell out of our way.
Do you have a dash cam?
I do.
Okay.
It
And
it is managed by our insurance company. They do not have a driver cam,
okay.
but I do have a camera facing out my windshield and two cameras on my hood windshield or hood mirrors.
Gotcha. Okay. Trying to think of anything else. My brain has run out of questions. So I don't know if that's a good or
So
bad thing. I guess I know everything now.
no,
I
it's not
must.
even know everything.
Yeah. Well, guys, chat. If you have any other questions, put them in now because unless my brain comes up with something or Eric has some deep dark secret he'd like to share, we'll be winding it down here pretty soon. Um, let's see. So now, tell me again what you have two channels you're coming up with. You're gonna do a gaming channel and you're gonna do cooking while on the road type channel.
Yes, there's going to be a live stream gaming channel that will be on my main channel, which I believe is still under DS Lin Freak.
Okay.
You can probably search up my name from this video, um, either the hashtag or my actual name.
Yeah, Eric's Twitter handle, or his address, I should say, is in the description, guys, already.
Um,
Adam Mangold asks, what is the worst part of long hauling?
for that, I would probably have to agree with Diesel Dave. Long hours, and again, people that don't know how to drive.
Okay. Shigone or Shigone, I don't know how to say that. I suck, sorry. I'm a motorcyclist. Do you have many issues with them?
Actually, no, I don't. I have noticed since I got out of the Marine Corps in 2014 that uh, most of the cyclists I run into on the road, they're much safer than they used to be. They finally have realized that there are a lot of people on the road that aren't watching out for them, and so most of the motorcyclists I run into, they're probably wearing reflective vests, and I always keep my eye out for them.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, guys, with my mind at a blank, and I think oh, wait. Anna Mangold, how many hours are you allowed to drive before you have to get off? Dave mentioned having a monitor on there that basically
Yes.
controls you and tells you this is how many hours you can work, and monitors everything you're doing. And if you try to go over that, you get spiked. So, do you have one of those?
Yes. There, it's the electronic log book, or electronic log device (ELD). You have four different clocks that you have to abide by. You have a 70-hour clock in which you can be on duty, not driving, or driving for a total of 70 hours in an 8-day period.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have your 14-hour daily duty clock in which you can be on duty, not driving. And then you've got your 11-hour driving clock, which is on duty driving. And then you've got your 8-hour break clock. So within the first 8 hours of your duty time, you have to take a 30-minute break.
Gotcha.
That 14-hour break runs down while you're driving and while you're not driving. And the only way to get that 70-hour clock to stop counting down is to be either off duty or in the sleeper berth.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, as awkwardly as I started it before, I'll start it again. Guys, thank you so much for your questions. Thanks for joining us. Eric, I really do appreciate you coming on and giving us a alternate perspective on things. And I was only partially joking. You and Dave should probably start your own talk show. Talk about trucking stuff.
Absolutely.
You have the cranky old veteran and the wide-eyed greenhorn. It'd be great.
I just for Dave, this was not in any attempt to step on your toes.
Oh yeah, no, I never thought it was. I thought it'd just be yeah. And as I started doing this, I knew I'd probably get more than one person with perspectives on similar topics, and people who have already sent me their own ideas or pitches for shows. I've got a couple of people asking me or if I'd like to have them on and talking about the exact same thing, which makes things a little awkward. But as we go through this and as the show proceeds, I'm finding out things about subjects I never would have thought otherwise to think about or ask about or find anybody who knew anything about. So whether it's Dave or you or, 3 months from now, someone else comes along and says, hey, I got something to say about whatever, by all means. And guys, if you have something that you consider yourself at least a passing expert at, well, or, at least knowledgeable enough to say something about it, send me an email with a pitch. At scribelight3@gmail.com, all one word. I can't promise I'll get you on a show, and I can't promise that I don't already have somebody lined up with something similar. And truth be told, when I put this call out in Lords of the Night, I got a lot of people with a lot of pitches for me. So I'm not wanting for options right now, but you never know. So if something comes to mind and you want to talk to me about it, by all means. But yeah, until the next time. Hey, Eric, again, thank you so much for joining me and coming on and offering your insight. Chat, thanks for joining us and having your questions and everything. And again, for those of you listening in the future, be sure to check out the description real quick. It may be the case that by the time you're listening to this, Eric's channel links will be in there, so you can go check out his gaming stuff and his trucker cuisine, as it were. So anyway, until next time, guys, take care, and I'll talk to you later.
See you, everybody.